Serious? What's your real ghost story? When I was around 5, my aunt got diagnosed with cancer, so my mom left me at my dad's for over a month to be able to care for her 24/7. One night, I woke up crying and asking if my mom came with my aunt. When my family questioned me, I said my aunt came to say goodbye and that she loves me and will take care of me, but did my mom come with her? I miss my aunt. 5 minutes later the phone rang and it was my mom telling us my aunt had just passed. Young kids are ghost telephones. LMAO. My uncle Bill died when I was 4. He and I were incredibly close. He was my favorite and I was his. I lived in Colorado but we went down to Alabama for his funeral. I'm 31 now, so I don't remember him actually visiting me, but I do remember telling my mom, "Mom, Uncle Bill says it's going to snow." My mom calmly reminded me that Uncle Bill was gone, and we were in Alabama in 1995. It doesn't snow here. Uncle Bill and I got the last laugh when we all woke up the next day and it was snowing in Alabama. Very lightly, but it was there. Similar thing happened when my grandpa died. My cousins live in Arizona and the day he passed they told us that it had snowed. Where we're from we get terrible winters, so I like to believe it was his way of letting them know he was okay. My mom died when I was a pretty young adult. I couldn't get her to answer her phone, so I went to her house to check on her and found her body. My mom's sister and I have always been very close. When she came in town for the funeral we decided to spend the night at my mother's for a few nights to feel closer to her and be amongst her things. We were sitting in the living room with her cat. When I found her, her cat was curled around her head. She loved that cat. We were talking about her life and it got a little bit deep. We were both crying and hoping she was at peace. Suddenly the cat who was sitting between us jumped up and started hissing at the fireplace. Then the flue to the fireplace slammed shut really loud and scared the crap out of us. We then heard footsteps above us in her bedroom where she died. It was scary and not comforting for us or the cat. My mom committed suicide and had been really despondent after my dad died. She was also the kind of person who never wanted anyone to feel sorry for her. I think we got too personal about her life and pee her off. I had several other uncomfortable moments in her house while cleaning it out. My then 8-year-old son and I were packing boxes and her bedroom door slammed shut. It was a nice day, no windows or doors open. My son looked at me and asked, "Why is Granny so sad? I hope your mum has found peace now." My grandmother coming to me in a dream to tell me she died. I was in China at the time. When I called home my family and girlfriend lied about it. The next night I had the same dream and called home to check in, but they lied again. I finally got my girlfriend to admit it. The dream stopped. When I got home, I was told that the last thing my grandmother said was to ask for me by name. Another one, when my dad became somewhat of a believer, was in his 50s. My grandmother was in hospice and we received the news she had passed away. My dad and I were on the back porch hanging out talking about everything. He seemed off though. Yes, I know his mother passed, but this was different. He seemed off. I asked him about it and he said he had the strangest dream the night my grandmother died. He was in the room with her in Michigan. We live in VA. My grandmother stood up, hugged and kissed him and told him everything would be okay. She proceeded to somehow walk out of some new door in the room that led to a green pasture with other relatives that had passed. He could only recognize his grandparents, the others he didn't know who they were, but something in his gut said they were other relatives my grandmother knew. It's crazy because now when we talk about it he doesn't act like it's a big deal. He was just having a crazy dream that was influenced by the situation. But he dreamed it the night she passed away. It was like the other relatives and her were telling him it'll be okay. I'm better off now. Dreams of people dying one night before. Seems like a reoccurring theme. Posted this elsewhere recently, but my biological dad lives in a creepy old farmhouse he renovated. I was helping him build out the office late one night. He went to the bathroom, and I kept plunking away. I was on the floor and set my hammer down. I felt something, a presence, and looked to where I thought someone would be. Nothing. I reach back down for my hammer and it's out of arm's reach, maybe 5 feet further than where I had set it down. I hadn't moved at all. He comes back after he's finished and I tell him what had just happened. He laughed and said, "The little girl must be playing with you." Little girl? What? He then tells me that every now and then he hears a little girl laughing. and has even seen her. She's always wearing the same pair of overalls and she just kind of wanders around upstairs. I'm not one to believe in paranormal experiences, but I have no explanation other than a little girl ghost just wanted to play. When I was younger, I used to see a black cat that would follow me around. It wasn't an everyday occurrence, but sometimes I would see them, and once I got a real good look at it. Black cat with bright green eyes. Anyway, I never really talked about the cat following me around and don't remember mentioning it to anyone. As I got older, I noticed it less until one day my brother asked me out of the blue what happened to the black cat that used to follow me. That freaked me out a little. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, but how did he know about the cat and that they were missing? My mom passed away in early November of 2005. I had gotten married at the end of May of that year and she waited to tell the family that she was sick until the end of June. She didn't want to take away from the joy of the baby of the family getting married. It was way too fast and none of us were ready to let her go. She always said she wanted to go at home. No hospital or hospice. Said it for years, especially after my dad passed when I was 16. He passed at home, surrounded by all of us up until the end. That was what she wanted too. In the house he built with his bare hands and the house they raised the family in. So, that's what we did. Basically, her 6 children moved back home and stayed with her for the final 2 months. We took shifts to see our husband-wives work during that time, but at any given point, there were 4 of us there 24 hours a day, making sure she was surrounded by love and never alone. Now, I didn't take her death well. I mean, I did everything that needed to be done and kept myself together. But we were close and this was so fast and I didn't want to believe it. I can't tell you number of times I caught myself calling her, to then just stare at the phone mid-dial and realize she wouldn't pick up. Well, a month after she had passed, I was alone at my own home watching TV. It was only about 7 PM, so dark at that time of year in New England, when movement caught my eye from my eye on the left. 12 feet from me, my mom walked through my kitchen stirring something in a bowl. She paused in the doorway, gave a little wave with her fingers from the hand wrapped around the bowl, as her head tilted with a smile and moved past the doorway. I was frozen to where I was sitting, so I called out Mom and heard her laugh. Her healthy laugh, from before she got sick and couldn't smile anymore, let alone laugh. I went to the kitchen, but there was nothing. I swear on my life that this was real. She was there. Thing is, my mom was a great baker. She passed a lot of her recipes on to me, and while not as often as I would have liked, we baked together. It was time that made both of us happy. We laughed, chatted, gossiped and drank tea while we waited for some delicious concoction to come from the oven. To this day, whenever I make her cheesecake, cookies, cream puffs or meringues, I'm happy. I dance around the kitchen as I stir the bowl and I think of her and the time she visited me. She has only visited me in my dreams since, always to warn me or help me with a problem that I'm having. I like to think that she was able to muster the energy to come see me in person, just this once, so that I knew that she was okay. I didn't have to be sad and that she would always be there. As sad as this is, I love it. Bless her. I used to work in a bar that wasn't exactly a jail, but temporarily held people awaiting court and sentencing. Everyone had stories about the residential ghost, who we called Sebastian. First time I saw Sebastian, I looked down the stairs while I was opening, and saw some legs in black pants and smart shoes. The ceiling obscured his torso upwards. When I went downstairs to ask how he got in, he ran down the hallway and vanished. A few other staff members mentioned seeing a man in a black suit who would be in the bar after hours while you'd be cleaning, but when you'd approach or speak to him, he'd turn a corner and disappear. Sometimes after closing, you'd hear someone ringing the bells on staff members' bikes downstairs, or you'd hear a crash and the bikes would be moved to a different place. Other times, you'd see a man in black duck into the office, and by the time you'd enter he'd be gone. The clincher that convinced us all that it wasn't just a thing we all believed because we all joked about it so often was the day the new chefs came. They didn't speak much English and would leave once dinner service was over, so they never engaged in the Sebastian stories. One day, one of them asked about a man in black kept leaning on the ordering window while they were cleaning. Sebastian was pretty chill though. He never scared us or did anything mean. I think he just liked hanging out. I used to work in a bar that wasn't exactly a jail, but temporarily held people awaiting court and sentencing. I like how it sounds like the bar was for those awaiting court. Lem just grab a quick tequila before court. Was visiting a friend in Chicago. She told me under no uncertain terms, the ghost of a woman who lived there wasn't really fond of men staying there. I was told that I needed to make sure I closed any door behind me, lest she slammed the door behind me. Sure as crap. First night I'm there, I get up to go pee in the middle of the night. I didn't close the bedroom door when I came back from the bathroom. Door slammed so hard it knocked a piece of art off the dang wall. Install a revolving door and attach it to a generator. Free electricity. We started hearing knocks on the siding, second floor, as if someone was at the door. This followed loud banging in the basement every night. I decided to record through the night and this snowflake ornament started spinning long after all had gone to bed. There was no draft as the other ornaments didn't move. When I played it back I heard a man's voice repeatedly calling me a hoe. I still live there. When I was about 12 during a summer, my sister who is 5 years older than me was out with friends after work. We shared a bedroom. I was up late, doodling in a notebook in bed and had an older, glass TV next to my bed that was turned off. At one point I looked up and saw, in the reflection of the TV screen, my sister walk out of our bedroom doorway and into the stairwell. When I turned around to greet her, she wasn't there. I get up and walk into the stairwell and all of the lights are still off downstairs and in the bathroom next to our bedroom. So I think she must have ran downstairs really fast and head down myself to find no one again. At this point I'm getting a little spooked and I wanted to prove myself wrong, so I went outside and her car was still gone. I sprint back inside and run back upstairs to my parents' room and wake my mom up to tell her I was pretty sure I had just seen a ghost. She was too tired to do much for it and so I went back in my bedroom, petrified. When I thought back on it I realized the girl was in a long sleeve dress that looked somewhat vintage and my sister was very much a tomboy in those days. But she had blonde hair like my sister and was looking towards me while walking out of the room. I stayed awake with my light on until my actual sister got home and I felt safe to sleep. It still creeps me out a bit to think about it to this day. I don't really believe much in an afterlife, but I know I saw a young girl walking out of the door. I wasn't really tired. I hadn't been watching anything earlier in the evening to scare me and even further wasn't scared when I first saw her because I thought it was just my sister. I can't explain it though. Never saw her or anything like it again. When I was 15, my dad was driving to a friend's house to practice some roller hockey. My buddy lived in a 2-story log cabin with a long winding driveway. It was the first time I had been to his house and had been told his parents wouldn't be home until later in the evening. As we drove up, my dad says he thought my friend's parents weren't home and I told him they weren't. He then points to a 2nd-story window and says, "Well, someone is here." I look up and see an older male dressed in Western clothing and wearing a big cowboy hat. This is Texas, so that isn't unusual. I said I guess they got home early and shrugged it all. A while later I mentioned something about asking his parents something and he says they won't be home till later. I point out both my dad and I saw someone in his house and he freaks out because no one was supposed to be there. We then go in the house to check it out and don't find anyone. After his parents got home we were in a back room of the house and I see a picture of the guy who had been upstairs. I point it out to my buddy and he turns white and says that was his granddad, who died 6 years earlier. Turns out my buddy's parents believed the house to be haunted by multiple spirits. My great-grandma died in 1992. My auntie got the phone call that night. The next morning, my then 3-year-old cousin came out of her room and sleepily mentioned, "Mama, Grandma Rose, the one who'd just died, visited me last night. She said to tell you that her hip doesn't hurt anymore." My girlfriend and I were driving back to her parents' house when I was probably 17 or 18. We went down this one road and she screamed for me to swerve. I figured she seen a deer. When I turned my head I seen a woman dressed in white pushing a white bassinet. She was also holding a boy's hand and he was wearing white. They weren't in my rear view. When I was around 7 years old I woke up in the middle of the night because I thought I heard a loud noise in the house. I walked out of my room and glanced down the long hallway where I could see the street light shining through the window onto the kitchen floor. I rubbed my eyes and I saw what appeared to be my younger brother standing just beyond the beam of light and the shadow. I walked towards him to see what was going on, and as I got closer and closer, it became more and more clear that this small boy was not my brother at all. It was standing there super still, head tilted and just staring at me with these piercing dark eyes that I'll never ever forget. I ran straight into my parents' room as fast as I could and slept in their bed that night. I never brought it up to them and I did my best to try and forget it. I think I almost convinced myself that I made it up in my head. Fast forward several years later and I'm a senior in high school hanging with my then girlfriend, my brother and a few of his friends at our house. It was dark and storming outside and our power had just gone out. I decided to light a candle, put it in the middle of us, and we were all just laying there talking on the floor. Someone randomly suggested that we tell ghost stories and I immediately thought about my encounter 10 years prior. I said, "Guys, I'm going to tell you all something that I've never told a single soul. I saw something many years ago right here in this very house and Jeff, if you believe me or not, I 100% saw something paranormal right over there actually," pointing over to the kitchen. Before I could even start my story, my brother goes, "Wait a second, are you serious?" I glanced over at him confused as to why he interrupted me. He then looked me dead in the eyes, his face distressed and turning a little bit white. Did you happen to see a little boy?" My jaw dropped and I was at a complete loss for words. Everyone around us immediately started freaking out too because they instantly grasped that we had both seen the same thing. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Dang dude. I'm sitting alone at my camp in the Australian bush. No lights to be seen. Chills. Think I might lock myself in my car now. My grandma and great grandma and their dog moved into an old cabin. There were many stories she had about strange things that happened in the house. Sinks turning on in the middle of the night, noises of footsteps in the attic, motion sensing night lights turning on when my great grandma was asleep with the dog in another room, etc. Also, there were crosses carved above many of the doorways. When they moved in, my aunt helped with some painting and covered the crosses in the process. As they covered them, they heard noises coming from another part of the house. The next day, the crosses were all back. Coincidentally, my mom's boss's son just recently moved into the same house 15 years later, and she was telling my mom about her son's haunted house before ever being told that my grandma and great grandma lived there. I'm not going to lie, I've had a bunch of paranormal things happen to me, but there's one event that really stuck with me. It was back when I was in middle school and I received violin lessons from one of my teacher's old students. My teacher always told us to be careful and be respectful in the practice room. It was a soundproof room we had in the orchestra band building, because that was the most haunted room. My teacher said you don't want to anger anyone. While I was waiting for my violin teacher to come into the practice room, I set up a chair for me and a chair for my violin teacher and placed it side by side. I ended up practicing for a couple minutes by myself in the room, and that's when it happened. As I was playing music, the chair next to me looked like it was being grabbed by someone and it spun around and faced me. The chair even slid back a bit as if someone had just sat on it. Not gonna lie, I freaked out and was screaming internally, but I decided to keep on playing because whatever it was, it wanted to watch me play. As I continued to play, my violin teacher walked in, saw my freaked out face and saw the chair facing me. He kinda just smiled at me and said, "Oh, so it happened to you too, huh?" He just shrugged it off and grabbed a different chair and sat next to me, and we proceeded with the lesson with that chair still facing me. Never been so freaked out in my entire life, if I'm being honest. That's really interesting. I like the idea that the ghost just wanted to hear you play. My uncle died and due to COVID we couldn't go to where he was, so my relatives who lived close decided to set their own wake in our house. I was cleaning my room when all of a sudden I hear this male voice clearly saying hello in my right ear. I dropped everything and went outside, but my male relatives were all out. In our culture, when a person dies we believe they revisit the place where they have relatives. My chow passed in December 1999. She was almost 14 years old. One evening in the late spring of 2000, I got an unusual urge to go out onto the front porch. The porch and front of the house were brightly lit by a streetlight across the street. While standing outside, I hear a chuff 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 noise coming from the left and getting closer. This sounded exactly like the sounds my chow chow would make when doing a fast walk. The chuff 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 continued approaching from the left. By now, I am looking up and down the street, in the yard, over the railings, trying to ascertain where the noise was coming from. There was no one on the street, no one in my yard, no one else outside. I looked and looked but could find no source, and the noise kept coming. When the sound was right in front of me, it stopped as I felt the sudden presence of my chow chow. I broke into happy tears and enjoyed her presence and thought how much I loved her and missed her. I thought how it would be to have her with me all the time. Something inside me said having a ghost, albeit a dog ghost, with me all the time, may not be the best thing. So I told her I loved her but she needed to go on with her journey. We'd be together again later. The chuff 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 started again, moving to the right, away from the porch. It continued for a short while, getting fainter and fainter. I never heard the chuff 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 again, but I believe we will be reunited one day. This one made me tear up. Animals have such a special bond and leave a hole that never quite fills up when they leave us. I hope that moment brought you a little bit of peace. I have several stories, so I'll make them as short as possible. Story 1. When I was 7, my great-grandpa died of natural causes. Now keep in mind I was a total slob as a child, never cleaning up after myself. I wake up one day in a half-asleep daze a few weeks after the funeral. I see my great-grandpa putting away all my clean clothes that were on the floor the night before. He says to me, "Hey sweetie, go back to bed. I'm just cleaning." I wake up a second time a few hours later, walk over to where he was standing, and see all my clothes that were on the floor neatly put away in my dresser. I asked my mom if she put away my clothes. She said no and her jaw dropped after I told her what I saw. Story 2. When I was 8, my cousin died from a collision with a semi as her car lost control on black ice. About a month or so passes, and I'm put in grief counseling because my young brain couldn't process such an early, violent death. One morning at my grandma's, again I wake up in a half-asleep daze, and she's on her knees on the floor smiling at me. She said, "When you're ready, I have the kids' table set up for some tea." Okay, I don't remember if or how I reacted, but I blinked and she was gone. I didn't go back to sleep this time. The kids' table was set up with cups and pretend drinks and teapots. I asked my grandma if she did this. She said no. Story 3. This one is more tame but still freaked me out. My dad died when I was 19, and his ashes were separated between me, my sis, and bro. Maybe a week into having his ashes, the lights in my apartment start to flicker non-stop. We tried changing the bulbs, calling maintenance to fix it, etc, but nothing worked. I texted my sis and asked her if she had anything weird happen since receiving his ashes. She had the same problem with her lights that she'd never experienced in her house. Now I know it's frowned upon to contact the dead, but the flickering light was annoying me to no end. I said out loud, "If you're here, Dad, could you please give me any other sign that doesn't involve messing with my crap?" I got a knock on my bedroom door at 2 AM. I was home alone, and the security footage showed no sign of a break-in. Story 4. My mom's house is haunted as well. We've had a ghost since we moved in there when I was a kid. There's very clear footsteps coming from the upstairs all the time, and this butthole of a ghost likes to slam open and shut our kitchen cupboards. Paranormal Activity 2 style. This guy's like Ghosts Hub. WTF. Too many to list them all, so I'll go with the most recent. Just happened last night. Background. My younger kids are ages 2 and 5. Their dad Bill died last month after a year-long battle with brain cancer. The kids collab with me in my bed. Ever since Bill died, at random times during the night when the kids are asleep and I'm still awake, I'll see a large shadow moving across the room out of the corner of my eye. I tend to dismiss that as my mind playing tricks on me. But last night my 2-year-old son woke up in the middle of the night. I heard him laughing and looked over at him, and he was pointing up at the ceiling, and then he waved. Then he smiled and whispered, "Dada," and reached his arm upward. Then my son made a series of sounds that his daddy taught him to do. He never does those sounds on his own, he only ever did them with his dad. It was like their little game. And then I really did see a large shadow move slowly across the ceiling over to the window, and then it was gone. And I was looking directly at it this time. This one brings a tear to my eye. I hope you three are doing okay, and here's hugs from an internet stranger and fellow mama. I am glad you and your son had that moment. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.